10 of South Africa's most notorious serial killers. Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, David Son and Sam Berkowitz, and John Wayne Gacy are all names of serial killers we're familiar with thanks to the popular streaming services and even movies. But who are some of the most prolific serial killers in our own backyard? IOL takes a look at some of South Africa's most notorious serial killers. What makes a serial killer, often referred to as a serial murderer, different to other murderers? Well, to be defined as a serial killer, a person has to kill more than 3 people over a period of time. Moses Sithole. Born on November 17, 1962, Moses Sithole was not only a serial killer, but also a serial rapist. The now 59-year-old terrorized Gauteng residence for 2 years until he was arrested in October 1995. He got his moniker the ABC Killer because his killing was spread between Atteridgeville, Boksburg, and Cleveland. On December 5, 1997, he was sentenced to 2,410 years in jail for the murders of mostly young women and 40 rapes. Sithole used the underwear of most of his victims to strangle them. Judge David Berkowitz imposed a lengthy sentence to ensure Sithole spent the rest of his life behind bars, as he would only be eligible for parole after 930 years. By the time he was sentenced, South Africa had demolished the death sentence. Before he started his killing spree, Sithole previously served 4 years in jail for rape. He was released for good behavior shortly before he started killing. He committed most of his crimes in and around Johannesburg between 1987 and 1995. The judge described Sithole as cunning, attractive, and articulate. That he succeeded in luring so many women to a gruesome end comes as no surprise, Berkowitz said, according to the report by AFP. According to AFP, the court heard how Sithole targeted women at a children's shelter and even showed up at the funeral of another of his victims and gave his condolences to the family. Sithole pleaded innocent despite confessing to several of these murderers in a videotaped statements to fellow prisoners. Sithole was born in 1968. He was known as the Phoenix Strangler from 1996 to 1997 in Phoenix, north of Durban. He was eventually found guilty of 19 murders and 10 rapes in sugarcane fields of Mount Edgecombe. On August 14, 1996, police arrested Twala in an early morning raid by heavily armed police in the Busters squatter camp near Phoenix. At the time, a psychological profile described the Phoenix killer as intelligent, charming to women, and likely to kill again. Nearly all of the victims were black women between 20 and 30. Like Sithole, he also used their own underwear to strangle them before burying them in shallow graves. He would lure the woman with the promise of jobs. He became the most wanted man in KwaZulu-Natal during his killing spree. Twala was eventually sentenced to 506 years in prison. Cedric Maake. Born in 1965, Cedric Maake was known as the Weimar Pan Killer after he murdered 27 people. He got his moniker after the southern suburb in Johannesburg, where most of the murders took place. On March 15, 2000, Maake was sentenced to 1,340 years in prison. During his sentencing, Judge Geraldine Burchell said he had to be permanently removed from the society because he was a dangerous man who would kill other human beings without compunction. At the time, AFP reported that he handed down a life sentence for each of the 27 murders, saying most of his victims were vulnerable and elderly men who ran small businesses such as tailors, shoemakers, and fresh produce traders. All were assaulted with a hammer and insignificant amount of cash stolen. Make was convicted on 27 counts of murders, 26 of attempted murder, 41 of armed robbery, 14 of rape, 1 of attempted robbery, 1 of assault, 1 of unlawful possession of firearms, and another of unlawful possession of ammunition. At the time of his sentence, he was married with 4 children. He pleaded guilty of 133 charges after his arrest in December 1997. Daisy Dahmer. Documented as South Africa's first female serial killer, Daisy Dahmer was accused of killing her own son and 2 husbands by poisoning. She was born in June 1886. According to South Africa Facts.co.za, she used strychnine for her husbands and arsenic for her son, Rhodes. However, in November 1932, she was found guilty of killing her son but acquitted of the deaths of her husbands. On December 30th, 1932, Dahmer was hanged in a Pretoria Central Prison. Throughout her trial, her third husband, Sidney Dahmer, maintained his wife's innocence. Geert van Rooyen. Geert van Rooyen was linked by police to the disappearance of 6 young girls in the late 1980s and a string of pedophile activities. The girls were abducted in 1989 by pedophile Van Rooyen and his girlfriend, Joy Harhoff. The couple killed themselves when police closed in on them. On May 14, 1996, the police believed that the missing schoolgirls could be still alive. They conducted an intensive search of South Africa's House of Horrors, once owned by Van Rooyen. However, the search yielded no trace of the missing girls, only a pile of animal bones. According to AFP, at the time, police theorized that Van Rooyen and Harhoff were Satanists who killed the girls as part of the bizarre rituals. They called occult experts Superintendent Cobus Jonker, who said there was no proof of ceremonies having occurred at the house. Jonker didn't rule out, however, that Van Rooyen may have been a satanic priest. If so, he would have led what appeared to be a normal life while practicing rituals elsewhere, according to AFP. Van Rooyen's son, Philip Van Rooyen, was sentenced to 28 years in jail for the murder of a young Zimbabwean girl in 1991. He claims his father, Geert, was part of the network which supplied children to cabinet ministers for sex. He claimed at least 40 children were involved, claims that were later proven to not involve cabinet ministers. Stewart Wilken. Stewart Wilken, also known as Potipor, is a self-confessed serial killer who murdered his young daughter and ate the body parts of at least one of his victims in Port Elizabeth, now known as Gqeberha. On February 1998, Judge Rhys Jansen, in sentencing Wilken, said he would have sentenced him to death if the death penalty was not outlawed. According to AFP, he was found guilty of murdering 4 women and 3 children, including his 11-year-old daughter, whom he strangled because she was not a virgin. He was also found guilty of 2 sodomy charges. Wilken was charged with 10 counts of murder and 5 of sodomy. He confessed the 3 murders and sodomy charges, of which he was acquitted. Jansen found that guilt could not be proven beyond reasonable doubt. During his trial, Wilken's lawyers claimed that his reign of terror had its roots in the sodomy and abuse he suffered as a 6-year-old at the hands of a church deacon. His targets were prostitutes and street children. He killed some after they demanded payment for sleeping with them. Wilken even confessed to cutting off the nipples of one of his victims and swallowing them. His daughter Wen's murder was the only one Wilken committed without sexual misdeeds. "I saw my child was not a virgin," Wilken said in a statement, according to an AFP report. There were allegations that she had been raped by her stepfather. "I closed my eyes and said, 'God, you must forgive me, but I'm sending my child's soul to you.'" Pierre Besson. Known as the insurance killer, Pierre Besson is South Africa's first documented serial killer. Born in 1880, Besson as a young boy reportedly started acting out violent fantasies on animals. He reportedly killed another boy with a knife when he was just 12 years old. His father died when he was 18, and he took out a life insurance policy on his younger brother. The duo went fishing, and he told others that his brother drowned, even though his body was never found, so the insurer never paid. He started a money lending scheme where one of the conditions was that the borrowers had to name him as a beneficiary to a life insurance policy. Besson reportedly killed them by either drowning them or strangling them in order to collect the money. He died by suicide in 1906, where police were close to arresting him. David Randiseni. David Randiseni was a serial rapist and killer. In 2009, he was convicted of 10 murders and 17 rapes. His crimes involved children and took place between 2004 and 2008 in Limpopo. On August 18, 2009, police said that the High Court in Modimolle sentenced Randiseni to 16 life sentences plus 220 years imprisonment for murder, rape, and kidnapping. On the 10 counts of murder, he was sentenced to 10 life sentences. On 16 counts of rape, he was sentenced to 16 life sentences. On 1 count of rape and 1 count of indecent assault, he was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for each count. Randiseni was sentenced to 180 years imprisonment on 18 counts of kidnapping, which is 10 years for each count. He was arrested on May 16, 2008, after an intensive police investigation during which over 550 DNA samples were tested before a police forensics expert identified the suspect. Of all 19 of his victims, only 1 was an adult woman. All the others were young girls. They were kidnapped and raped, and 10 were murdered in a crime spree which devastated the Modimolle community. Handing down his sentence, Judge Roger Claassen said Randiseni could not be considered for parole for the next 35 years. The SABC reported that Claassen said the crimes were committed in a horrific manner. Randiseni made admissions, but by choosing to remain silent, he showed no reason to prove his innocence. Claassen said the state had proven beyond a reasonable doubt he committed the offenses. On August 30, 2009, Randiseni died by suicide and was found hanging by a sheet from a window frame in Thohoyandou prison. Bulelani Mabai. Bulelani Mabai, known as the Monster of Toleni, was sentenced to 25 years beyond bars in High Court in Butterworth for raping and mutilating 20 women and children. He would then beat or hack them to death. His oldest murder victim was a woman, aged 79, and the youngest was a 14-month-old baby. He was charged with 20 counts of murder, 6 counts of rape, and 10 counts of housebreaking with intent to commit murder and rape. He targeted homes where only women and children stayed. Jack Mogale. Jack Mogale had people living on the outskirts of Johannesburg locking their doors early in the evening between 2008 and 2009. Mogale was found guilty in the High Court in Johannesburg on March 16, 2011, of 52 of the 61 charges against him, including rape, kidnapping, and murder. Judge Franz Homo found Mogale guilty of 9 kidnappings, 19 rapes, 16 murders, an attempted murder, 3 robberies with aggravating circumstances, a fraud or theft, an assault with the intent to cause grievous bodily harm, a sexual assault charge, and a charge of escaping from lawful custody. Mogale had pleaded not guilty to all the charges throughout his trial. Dubbed the West End serial killer by police before his identity was discovered, Mogale lured adult black females to open areas where he raped and murdered them. This was often at the West End bricks and clay factory near his home in Waterworks, West Naria, and at various locations in Lenasia. Mogale was sentenced to 16 life terms and 23 years for raping and killing 16 of his victims. Sentencing is a difficult thing. To look into the eyes of another human being and decide whether to send them away for a very long time is not easy, Homo said at the time. And that's it from Egypt's Crime. Stay tuned to SA Criminals and Correctional Updates.